Nu ska vi ha lite panel här, tänkte jag. So please welcome up Andrew, Per and Anders. Welcome. You feel good?
Of course.
Of course.
Excited.
Yeah. So we will talk a little bit about UK and the Nordics and some learnings, and we all have heard of you on you today. So my first question was, which retailers in the UK or brands can we get inspired by in the Nordics? Which one are the best? I mean, all three of you have a little bit more into that than me.
Active instinct. No. I think I heard someone talking about John Lewis a moment ago, and I think they've got to be held up as one of the brands that have got the multi-channel story right. They're one of the organisations that could really have been hit in the early days, where we all as marketeers went running out and said, look, we can provide websites that enable people to find the cheapest stuff. And the John Lewis proposition has always been around value. But what's the definition of value? It's not about cheapest price. And I think John Lewis have nailed what value means to their customer base. They're not always the cheapest. Yes, they price match, but actually it's more than that. It's about customer service, it's about the proposition, and people buy into the brand.
Yeah, I would definitely say John Lewis as well. That's one of the players that we have been studying and looking into. Yeah.
And what about your experience from Eleganten and Phone House then? How did you manage to was it easier to do it in UK than in Sweden?
I think the reason why UK is leading the market in e-commerce is a number of things. But first of all, when I went to UK in the beginning of the 90s, I really felt that retail is more developed in UK. And that has just going on, and especially when you go online today, the visual merchandising and the design of the sites is more innovative than general Swedish or Nordic sites. And then we have the density of people. It's quite simple to set up one warehouse in Manchester or in New York and distribute products throughout the whole country. So it's simpler to build services if you compare it with Nordics, especially if you see it from a Nordic perspective, where we have 4 different markets, 4 different customer behaviors, and 4 different languages.
Yeah. And do you have any other brands where you were at Dixon Group that you got inspired by in your work there? Like, who was the best?
I think the players that you mentioned is actually the top 5s. House of Fraser and John Lewis and yeah.
I must admit, Argos is
Argos,
as mentioned by Ian earlier, and personally I think they've been on a very different journey to a lot of retailers. Their business model is very much a warehouse with a shop front. So in some ways it's been, and their customers have been used to looking in a catalogue, going in, self-selecting, filling in a form, handing it over, and walking out with the product. I think that's actually been relatively straightforward for them to adopt into e-commerce. And certainly their big, strong play is around click and collect, because that really plays to their heritage. Have they got the best website? Probably not. But does it work for their customers? Absolutely.
Yeah, but that's also a question I had. Like, how did the click and collect took off in the UK? Because it really isn't that big here that it is in the UK.
It is.
It is?
Yeah, it is.
But not in the same segment.
To the same extent.
Click and collect, you can go to a lot of boxes and collect it without going into the store and everything.
Yeah, if you take it in that perspective when it comes to boxes and that sort of things. But when it comes to order online and pick up in store, that is huge in the Nordics as well. But yes, we have learned it from UK. UK was the first market, and US, of course, that started that.
So now Grangården has click and collect as well?
Not yet.
Not yet. Anders, what do you think about click and collect? Have that? I mean, you're more.
Actually, that's an interesting thing compared to Denmark, because in Denmark this is a very new thing compared to Sweden. But that's all. I don't really have.
But I mean, you're more experienced in pure play e-commerce, basically.
Exactly.
And what do you see that as a disadvantage that you can't offer in click on collect? Do you see that customers actually would like
Yeah,
that?
of course. I think, especially in Denmark, it's working like that. Actually, for the Swedish Post, it's a little bit complicated to get your stuff. It just works really good with click and collect, and that's what maybe the competitor is doing in Denmark right now. So I think it's that's how it should work. I mean, I don't see any other way.
Is it another question that we got on Twitter and that have been in a lot of focus lately as well is returns on a global market. I mean, we talked about it a little bit. How it is a little bit harder to do returns to the UK than in Sweden, basically. So the question is like, how big is this problem, and are there any great solutions that can solve that in a global aspect?
I think we saw some numbers earlier where customers are looking at how easy, 36% I think the number was, customers looking at a website, the first thing they're looking for is how easy is it going to be to return product. I think when you start going cross-border, having a local return solution makes it much easier for a foreign brand, because the customers have this hesitation on buying from a foreign business, wherever the company is based. Because if something goes wrong, how am I going to get that support? So being able to offer in-country returns is important. But with my business head on, how on earth do I get that product back into inventory and ship it out again? You go around Germany, there's vast warehouses of product that's just sat there. It is not financially feasible to send it back to the UK or name another country. But that's dead stock. But for part of the customer proposition is that local returns process, which enables the customer to have confidence to make the purchase in the first place. So is it a cost of doing business? Or do you actually start looking at the returns as one of the issues that you need to sort that further up the chain? So is it about sizing, in the fashion space? Is it around product descriptions? Are you showing clear images? Are customers making an informed decision when they decide to purchase from you? Because if you're not giving them a clear image, they're thinking they're buying one thing. When it arrives, it looks like something else.
The answer to this is very, very simple. Listen to customers. If you have 6% return rate, call 100 customers, ask, sorry, we just want to know why you returned it, and you can halfen that. And that is a huge cost. So if we just listen to customers, we can do small changes on the processes and on the sites and the different touch points. And then we can, I don't say we can't eliminate it, but we can easily halfen it.
And have you seen any innovative solutions there?
I think I can say, from a practical perspective, the solution that I've seen worked the best is I see two solutions. And one is you have a return address in each country. The other one is that you have a return label with the package, or that you go online and print it out. And this is very practical, but that is the two solutions that I see work in
any market, basically.
Yeah, exactly.
Another aspect of this that we can get inspired by UK retailers, what can UK learn from Sweden then?
Simplifying things.
Are we better at that in Sweden, or?
When it comes to not the look and feel, but when it comes to the processes, I believe Nordics in general is quite advanced compared with any other country.
Do you have any example of how that can?
I can only give one example on behind the scenes processes then, but when it comes to the whole RFC, return for credit process, when it comes to back end to suppliers, the process that we have built for the Nordics in the Eleganten chain has now been implemented in UK as well, because UK used to return everything to one central point, the warehouse, the central warehouse, usually cost-driven. The process that we invented in the Nordics was that the stores are responsible for the goods. They fill out the RFC sheet. They wait until we have a solution for the product, and then we return it to the supplier or scrap it or whatever we do. But the cost of changing this process is more than 250 million pounds.
That's a lot.
I think one other thing, just a very simple thing that you very fast can see that the Nordics doing really well, is just the web design.
Yeah.
You can just click into some UK web shops and you will notice right away that that's one area where the Nordics really ahead. And I think that's also in the business area. What can we do better in the Nordics? It's design, and that's just from everything from actually the products. It's everything related to design that where the Nordic actually have a competitive advantage in Europe.
I also think that it's pretty good. I mean that Swedish e-tailers and retailers actually looking into the other Nordic countries pretty fast, because the Swedish market is so small. So people are more into internationalizing things and processes and everything. Yeah. UK retailers maybe took a little bit longer to go out from the home market. Do you agree on that, or do you see?
No.
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 Okay. Explain what you.
No, my feeling is that from a pan-Nordic perspective, a lot of things has happened over the last 10 years. But it's now lately, the 2 or 3 last years, that we see Jula go into Norway and Rusta go into Norway, and we have many examples that is quite early on that journey. When it comes to internationalization from UK, that started already in the 90s. And especially when we're looking at Germany, that started already in the 80s.
I think I will disagree a little bit with you, because I think that how I see it is also one of the advantages we have being a Nordic people. We're having this discussion in English. We're pretty good in looking into new markets. And what I see is when American or British shops, they try to go into new markets, they have a problem prioritizing the new markets because they are smaller. They have a problem really understanding how you do business in a different market. And I think that's some of the stuff that we're really good at here in the Nordic, where we are more, we need to get out to more markets to succeed with e-commerce, because the Nordic is too small, or at least Denmark is too small. So I think it's pros and cons, because I see a lot of UK shops who says, now we go all in. ASOS was one of the first really big web shops. They went really into Germany, but you know they did a crap job. And I just think it's such a big company, and they go into Germany, they must be able to dominate that market, but I didn't see that happen. ASOS still today is still a British website here in I haven't checked it, but in the Nordics, right? So I feel that it goes both ways. It's difficult to prioritize a small market for a UK company, but for us as Nordic people, it's very easy to prioritize Germany. But it's just a tough market.
Yeah. Another thing that's a huge difference in the market right now is that marketplaces has such a big chunk of the market in UK and Germany and a few other markets. I mean, Amazon and eBay and others have a really big chunk actually of the online sales. I see some numbers that it's over 10% and up to 20% in some categories as well. So how do you see that from the UK perspective? How does that affect the market?
I think the eBay example is quite interesting in that they had to change, because the original person-to-person sales mechanism for them was reaching a plateau. So how were eBay going to reinvent themselves? They had lots of customers, so it made a fairly natural sense for them to start talking to retailers to get them to trade in directly. I think in the early days they had problems because a lot of retail brands said, well, people are flogging second-hand stuff on eBay. I don't want my brand associated with that. And they've been on a journey to understand that actually those very same people do still trade with those brands. I think there's always an issue around who owns the brand and who's got the momentum, and it's around customer acquisition. So the benefits for the retailers is the pure volume of people that go through these marketplaces. The retailers trade some control to access those markets. There's no doubt about that. Do they trade some of the margin as well? That's also a possibility. But I think it gives you the chance to try out a new market. If you're looking at cross-border, it's a great way of trying new markets. Someone else has already had the pain. You put your products on their marketplace, and it helps you see what the market's like. I honestly think, though, that from a consumer's perspective, they still think they're buying from Amazon. They don't think they're buying from a retailer. And if you're using the Amazon marketplace and many other marketplaces, actually, who has that relationship with the customer? Now, the brand people can sit and argue that actually it doesn't matter who has that relationship, or it's very important for us to have that relationship.
But can you afford to not sell on Amazon?
Well, this is the point, isn't it? It's the pure volume of traffic that they get, and how much would it cost any business to acquire customers at that level of magnitude? The costs just make it untenable. But I think also it still gives you a chance to have those conversations with your customers and try and get them to come to you directly later.
Yeah. Anders, will you, if you would enter the UK with a pure player e-commerce site, will you like start with Amazon and then launch your shop afterwards, or how will you do it?
I think what I had in my presentation is this thing about winning and being number one, and I think you need, that's what I always said, if you go into a market, you need to aim to become number one, and just testing with a marketplace is not, well, you don't have the customer service set up, there's so many things not done in that plan, and I think if you decide to go into a new market, you need to aim at being number one in that market. So I don't see this model testing on Amazon or eBay, but I understand companies doing it, and I also understand it's a really big business. There's a big difference in e-commerce in Nordics and the rest of the world because of eBay and Amazon. But I would go all in and say I wouldn't. But I don't know how to enter the UK. I know how to enter the Nordic. But I would go all in if I should go into the UK.
Yeah. And related question as well, like something else that I think will come here in a few years is Amazon Prime, where you actually can buy stuff with a great discount all the time with just your subscription. How have that affected the UK market? Is it harder to like attract people because of that?
I think for some customers it sets a level of expectation. I think for others it actually devalues the role that delivery has in the whole transaction process. And if you start talking about a service being free, then how do all the various parties involved value that and the quality of that service? Does it then make it harder to charge for a premium service like a next day service? I think in some ways it's indicative of how a lot of e-commerce is going to go. It's going to go down a subscription-based model. So there are a number of commodity products that you regularly buy that would make sense to have as a subscription. So certainly in the groceries sector, there's a whole basket of products that you will always have. Once a month, you'll have the same quantity. That's where some of the brands can start trading direct with consumers and that sort of subscription service. But coming back to your point about Prime, I think what it does is it actually locks a degree of loyalty in with the customer. Because at the back of my mind, I know I've paid for that fee. Therefore, the first port of call I'm always going to make is in Amazon. That's where I'm going to go first. And I'm not saying whether that's a good or bad thing, but from a marketing perspective, it's brilliant. Because what it's doing is it's making an Amazon customer think about going back and making repeat purchase through the Amazon platform.
Can that also be something that, I mean, there are some categories, verticals in the UK that have come much further and mature than in the Nordics, like for example, pet food is a really huge market in the UK, but not so much in Sweden at least. In Finland it's a bit more. Also groceries have just started to take off in Sweden, but it's been pretty big in UK for a few years.
Still only 5% of total grocery spend.
Yeah, but in some parts of, for example, London, it's up to 20%. So,
yeah.
So I mean, it have taken off in compared to Sweden. So can this type of Amazon Prime and that kind of subscription services be the enabler, or do you think that it's something else?
Of course, it's an enabler. If you can get a customer to get a subscription, then you sell every week. So yes.
So you will launch subscriptions from now.
You have to wait and see.
Okay. Wait and see. That's great. Big thanks for being in this panel, and a big round of applause.
Thank you very much. Thank you.